The best birthday gift you could give me, Dad? Just leave and don't come back. My son's words cut through the warm evening air of the backyard I'd landscaped, the patio I'd laid stone by stone. I watched him there, 29 years old, confident in his cruelty, surrounded by friends who nodded their approval. I didn't argue, I didn't plead, I simply stood, brushed the dust from my jeans, and walked toward the gate I'd installed myself. "Enjoy your party," I said quietly. Behind me, I heard laughter. Cruel, dismissive laughter. As I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed. Life, I've learned, has a twisted sense of timing when it comes to delivering lessons about gratitude. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I was up at 5 that morning, marinating steaks for Michael's 29th birthday. $30 a pound. Sarah had mentioned how divine these cuts were at some fancy restaurant downtown, so naturally that's what we were having. The house was quiet except for Sarah's heels clicking upstairs on the hardwood floors I'd installed last year. Brazilian cherry. $3 grand and 2 herniated discs later, the place looked like something out of her magazines. My phone buzzed while I was dicing potatoes. Text from my foreman asking if I was coming in for Saturday overtime. Double pay on the Morrison project. I typed back, family stuff, and set it aside. Michael's birthday always came first. "Morning, Dad." He shuffled into the kitchen looking rough, messy hair, dark circles under his eyes. The stress from his law firm was getting to him, or maybe it was too many late nights with Sarah's crowd. "Coffee's fresh," I told him, nodding toward the Italian machine Sarah had to have. $2,000 for coffee that tasted the same as my old Mr. Coffee. But what did I know? He poured himself a cup and leaned against the granite countertop. Another Sarah upgrade from the old Formica that made the kitchen look dated. I'd spent my entire vacation installing that granite, cutting and fitting each piece by hand. "So about today," he started, and something in his voice made me look up from the cutting board. "Sarah's parents are flying in from Charleston." "That's great," I said, still dicing. "More family to celebrate with." Yeah, well, there it was, that nervous hair-running thing he'd done since he was a kid. They're kind of particular about presentations. You know how it is. I set down the knife. "What exactly are you trying to say, son?" "Nothing bad, Dad. Just maybe keep it low-key today. Don't go overboard with the whole host thing. Sarah thinks it might be better if you just blend it in more." Blend it in. In the house I built. At the party I was paying for. With the food I was cooking. I was quiet for a long moment, watching him fidget with his expensive coffee cup. The same kid I'd worked double shifts to put through law school was asking me to make myself invisible in my own home. "Sure," I finally said. "Whatever makes you happy." But as I watched him walk away, relief spreading across his face, something cold settled in my chest. 29 years of putting him first, and this was what I'd earned. A request to disappear from his life, one small piece at a time. By evening, the backyard was packed. Sarah's parents had arrived in their Mercedes, all polished smiles and expensive cologne. Her father kept checking his Rolex while her mother critiqued everything with that special brand of Southern passive aggression. "What a cozy space," Mrs. Harrison said, eyeing the pergola I'd built. "Very rustic." I was manning the grill, staying in the background like a good little servant, when I overheard Sarah talking to her college roommate by the pool. "Oh, Jeff's been such a lifesaver," she was saying. "He basically rebuilt this entire house for us. For free, of course. He loves having projects to keep him busy since the divorce." For free. Loves having projects. I flipped the steaks harder than necessary, the sizzle drowning out the sound of my grinding teeth. $40,000 in materials and 6 months of my life reduced to a hobby. "Dad seems a little tense tonight," someone said behind me. I turned to see Michael talking to his law school buddy Jake, both of them holding craft beers I'd bought specially for the party. "Yeah, well, he gets like this at social events," Michael said with a shrug. "Never really learned how to just relax around people. Blue-collar thing, I guess." Blue-collar thing. The words hit me like a physical blow. This from the kid whose college I'd paid for with these same blue-collar hands. The kid whose law school loans I'd co-signed when the bank wouldn't give him enough. "Must be nice having him around, though," Jake said. "Free labor whenever you need something fixed." Yeah, it has its perks, Michael laughed. Though honestly, sometimes I think he needs this more than we do. Gives him purpose, you know? That's when I snapped. I set down the spatula and walked straight over to them. Jake saw me coming first and suddenly got very interested in his beer label. Gives me purpose, I said, my voice cutting through their conversation. Michael's face went red. Dad, I didn't mean, no, I think you meant exactly what you said. The entire backyard was starting to turn toward us now. So let me get this straight. 29 years of working double shifts to pay for your college, that gives me purpose. Co-signing loans when your credit wasn't good enough, that's for my benefit. Rebuilding this entire house with my own hands so you could impress Sarah's family, I do that because I'm bored. Dad, you're making a scene, Michael hissed, glancing nervously at Sarah's parents. Am I? Because I thought I was finally telling the truth. I looked around at all the shocked faces. You want to know what really gives me purpose, son? Finding out that my own kid thinks I'm some pathetic old man who needs busy work to feel useful. Michael's jaw tightened. He was getting angry now, embarrassed in front of his friends. Look, we appreciate everything you've done, but you can't just appreciate. The word tasted bitter. You appreciate it, like I'm the neighborhood handyman you throw a few bucks to out of pity. That's not what I meant, and you know it. It's exactly what you meant, that I need this more than you do, that fixing your problems is some kind of therapy for me. I could feel 29 years of swallowed pride finally breaking free. Well, congratulations, Michael. You figured me out. I'm just a lonely old contractor who lives to serve his ungrateful son. The silence was deafening. Even the music seemed to have stopped. Sarah appeared at Michael's side, her face pale. Maybe we should all just take a breath. No, Michael said, his voice shaking with anger. No, I'm done with this. I'm done walking on eggshells around him, pretending his constant hovering is normal. He turned to face me fully, and I saw something cold in his eyes I'd never seen before. You want to know the truth, Dad? The best birthday gift you could give me? Just leave and don't come back. I looked at him there, 29 years old, confident in his cruelty, surrounded by friends who nodded their approval. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply brushed the dust from my jeans and walked toward the gate I'd installed myself. Enjoy your party, I said quietly. Behind me, I heard laughter. Cruel, dismissive laughter from people eating my food in the home I'd built. I was barely at my truck when I heard the commotion behind me. Shouting, then Sarah's voice cutting through the noise. Somebody help! Jeff! Jeff, wait! I turned around to see smoke billowing from the kitchen window. People were streaming out of the backyard, some of them on their phones, others just standing around looking helpless. Sarah came running toward me, her face pale. It's Michael. He went to the grill. The grill after you left said something about finishing the steaks himself. But something went wrong with the gas, and now there's a fire in the kitchen, and his hand is burned, and I don't know where anything is. Of course they didn't, because I was the one who'd installed everything. I was the one who knew where the emergency shutoffs were, where I'd mounted the fire extinguisher, where the first aid kit was stored. I followed Sarah back into the house, found Michael in the kitchen, holding his right hand under cold water, while his law school buddy Jake stood nearby, looking completely useless. There was a grease fire smoldering on the stovetop, nothing major, but enough smoke to send everyone into a panic. Where is everyone? I asked, grabbing the fire extinguisher from inside the pantry door. Outside, Michael said through gritted teeth. Sarah called 911. I sprayed down the flames, took all of 30 seconds, then turned off the gas and opened the windows. The whole emergency was over before the fire trucks would even get here. That's it? I said, looking around the kitchen. This is what had everyone running around like it was the end of the world? Michael's face was red, and not just from the burn. The flames shot up when I tried to adjust the gas. I wasn't expecting. You turned the valve the wrong way, I said, examining the grill controls. This is the on-off. This is the temperature control. I showed you this when I installed it last year. I forgot, okay? It's been a long night. Jake shifted uncomfortably in the doorway. Maybe I should go check on everyone outside. Yeah, maybe you should, I said, not taking my eyes off Michael. After Jake left, I pulled the first aid kit from under the sink and started examining Michael's hand. Second-degree burn on 2 fingers. Painful, but nothing that required a hospital visit. So let me get this straight, I said, applying burn gel with practiced efficiency. 5 minutes ago, you told me to get out of your life forever. Now here I am, cleaning up your mess because none of your sophisticated friends know how to handle a simple kitchen fire. Dad, and where exactly was everyone while you were burning yourself? Sarah? Jake? All these important people who think I'm such an embarrassment? I wrapped his fingers with gauze. What were they doing while their host was in trouble? Michael was quiet for a moment, watching me work. Sarah doesn't know where you keep things. And Jake's never really dealt with this kind of stuff. Right. But I'm the one who needs this more than you do, remember? The one who does this just to give my pathetic life some purpose. Through the window, I could see fire trucks pulling up, sirens wailing. The neighbors were gathering on the street, probably wondering what drama was unfolding at the Miller house now. You can tell them it's handled, I said, finishing with the bandage. Unless you'd rather let Jake explain how much help he was. Michael looked at his wrapped hand, then back at me. For the first time all night, he looked uncertain. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, son. We're just getting started. Michael looked confused, maybe even a little scared. His eyes darted between my face and the door, like he was calculating whether this was the moment to make an escape. The confident smirk from earlier had completely disappeared. What do you mean? His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Before he could answer, the fire trucks pulled up outside, followed by an ambulance. Red and blue lights painted the kitchen walls in rotating colors. I could see Sarah through the window, gesturing frantically toward the house with both hands, her designer dress wrinkled and stained with soot. She was probably making it sound like we'd barely survived a 4-alarm blaze. Fire Chief Rodriguez came through the front door first, followed by 2 paramedics and another firefighter. His heavy boots echoed on the hardwood floors I'd installed. Where's the fire? Rodriguez asked, looking around with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every kind of domestic disaster. Kitchen, I said, leading them back. My voice was steady, professional. Small grease fire on the stovetop, already extinguished. I watched Rodriguez examine the scene, his movements methodical and thorough. He checked the stove, ran his hand along the exhaust hood, even opened the oven to make sure there were no lingering hot spots. I felt a small surge of satisfaction watching him work. This was a man who knew what he was doing, unlike the panic-stricken guests who'd fled at the first sign of trouble. Looks like you handled it properly, Rodriguez said, making notes on his clipboard. Gases shut off, areas ventilated. What happened? My son tried to adjust the grill controls and turned the valve the wrong way, I explained, feeling Michael's face burn with embarrassment beside me. Flame shot up, caught some grease that had splattered onto the stovetop. Nothing structural, no damage to the house systems. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his good hand fidgeting with his shirt sleeve. I could practically hear him thinking about how to spin this story later, how to make it sound less like his father had to save him from his own incompetence. Anyone injured? Rodriguez asked. Burn on his hand, I said, nodding toward Michael. 2nd degree, 2 fingers. I've already applied first aid. One of the paramedics moved toward Michael, a young woman with kind eyes and efficient movements. Let's take a look at that. While they unwrapped my bandaging to examine the burn, Rodriguez continued his inspection. I felt a familiar pride watching him appreciate the work I'd done on this house. The careful attention to safety codes, the professional installation of every system. You did good work here, mister. Rodriguez paused, pen hovering over his clipboard. Miller. Jeff Miller. I'm a contractor. The words felt solid in my mouth, grounding. No shame in them, despite what my son apparently thought. Shows. Everything's by code. The fire extinguisher placement, the gas shutoffs, even the ventilation. Most people don't think to open windows first thing. Rodriguez looked genuinely impressed. Your son's lucky you were here. Actually, I wasn't, I said, watching Michael's face carefully. A flash of something, guilt, shame, crossed his features. I'd already left for the evening when this happened. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. You came back? His wife called for help. They didn't know where anything was. I kept my voice neutral, but I could feel the weight of that statement settling on Michael's shoulders like a lead blanket. The paramedic was finishing up with Michael's hand, her movements gentle but professional. Burns are clean, properly treated. You'll want to keep them dry for a few days. Change the dressing twice daily. Should heal up fine in about a week. No need for the hospital? Michael asked, and I heard the relief in his voice. He was probably already calculating how to minimize this story when he told it to his colleagues. Not unless they get infected. Whoever treated this knew what they were doing. The paramedic looked at me with genuine respect. Medical training? Construction work. You learn to handle burns and cuts. 35 years of working with my hands, of dealing with real problems that couldn't be solved by talking or filing paperwork. They packed up their equipment and started heading out, their heavy gear clanking softly. Rodriguez stopped at the door, his weathered face curious. "Mr. Miller, mind if I ask why you left your own son's party?" I glanced at Michael, who was suddenly very interested in his bandaged fingers, his face flushed red with embarrassment. The same look he'd had as a kid when I'd catch him in a lie. Family disagreement. Must have been some disagreement for you to leave and come back. Rodriguez's tone was carefully neutral, but I could see the understanding in his eyes, the look of a man who'd seen his share of family drama. Sometimes people need to learn the difference between wanting independence and actually being able to handle it. After the emergency crews left, the house felt eerily quiet. Most of the guests had cleared out during the commotion, like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Sarah's parents were long gone, probably racing back to their hotel to discuss how mortifying the whole evening had been. The law school friends had evaporated like smoke, so much for all that lawyer solidarity. "Dad," Michael said, flexing his bandaged fingers experimentally. His voice was smaller now, less certain. Thank you. Thank you for coming back, for handling all this. I know tonight got out of hand, and—" "Where are they?" I interrupted, feeling a cold anger building in my chest. "What?" Michael blinked, genuinely confused. "Your friends, Sarah's parents, all those sophisticated people who were so eager to judge your embarrassing blue-collar father." I looked around the empty kitchen, letting the silence stretch. "Where exactly were they when you needed help?" Michael's face flushed again, deeper this time. He ran his good hand through his hair, that nervous gesture that meant he knew he was cornered. "They were outside. They didn't know what to do." Sarah didn't know where the fire extinguisher was in her own house. I started putting the first aid kit away, each movement deliberate and controlled. "Jake didn't know how to shut off a gas valve. Your in-laws ran for the hills the second things got messy." I closed the cabinet door with a soft click. "But somehow I'm the problem." "Dad," Michael's voice had a pleading edge now, the same tone he'd used as a teenager when he was trying to talk his way out of trouble. "No, Michael. Let me paint you a picture of how this played out." I turned to face him fully, and I saw him instinctively take a step back. "You burned yourself trying to prove you didn't need me around. Your wife panicked because she's never had to deal with a real problem in this house, because I've always been there to handle them. Your friends stood around being useless. And who got called to save the day? The same blue-collar embarrassment you told to get out of your life. I know, okay? I know how it looks." His jaw was set now, that stubborn look I remembered from when he was a teenager, when he'd dig in his heels even when he knew he was wrong. "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've spent so much time being ashamed of me that you forgot to learn anything from me." Michael was quiet for a moment, and I could see him wrestling with something. Then he straightened up, his shoulders squaring in that way that meant he was about to double down on a bad decision. "I appreciate what you did tonight, Dad. I really do." His voice was getting stronger, more confident, the lawyer voice he used when he was trying to control a narrative. "But this doesn't change anything. I'm still 29 years old. I still need to handle my own life, make my own decisions. I can't have you swooping in every time something goes wrong." I felt something cold settle in my Stefak. After everything that had just happened, he was still choosing his pride over reality. "Is that what you think this was? Me swooping in? Wasn't it?" He lifted his chin defiantly, and for a moment I saw the spoiled child he'd been before life had taught him any real lessons. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. The sound seemed to echo off the granite countertops I'd installed. Son, you have no idea what swooping in looks like. Tonight was just basic human decency. What you're about to experience is what happens when that safety net disappears completely. What's that supposed to mean? His confidence wavered slightly, uncertainty creeping into his voice. I looked around the kitchen one last time, the kitchen I'd remodeled in the house I'd helped him buy, filled with appliances I'd researched and installed. Every surface, every fixture was a testament to work he'd never appreciated. You'll figure it out. Dad, wait. He reached out with his good hand, but I was already heading for the door. This time, I didn't look back. I drove home to my apartment through empty streets, my hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing down every bill I paid for Michael, every service that had my name on it, every financial safety net I'd quietly maintained for 29 years, $40,000 a year. That's what his independence was actually costing me. Monday morning, I started making calls. Health insurance first, Michael off my policy by noon. Auto insurance next, his rates would triple without my multi-car discount. Then the utilities, gas, electric, water. Each call was the same polite conversation ending with effective immediately. By Wednesday, my phone was ringing constantly. Dad, what the hell is going on? Michael's voice was tight with panic. I just got a notice that my health insurance is canceled and the electric company is demanding a $2,000 deposit. How's your hand? I asked calmly, sipping my coffee. What? My hand is fine, but good. Glad to hear you're healing up properly. Dad, focus. They're saying I need to establish my own accounts for everything. The gas company wants $1,500, electric wants $2,000, water department wants $800. That's over $4,000 just in deposits. I could hear the papers rustling in the background, probably spread across his granite countertop, the same countertop I'd installed. Sounds like the cost of independence, son. This is insane. You can't just cut everything off without warning. I gave you warning Saturday night. You told me to leave your life and never come back. I'm just following instructions. There was silence on the other end. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to figure out how much this was going to cost him. Dad, please. I said I was sorry about Saturday. I was out of line. Yes, you were. So can we fix this? Put everything back the way it was? I leaned back in my chair, feeling surprisingly calm. No. No? What do you mean, no? I mean, you wanted to handle your own life, make your own decisions. This is what that looks like, Michael. Welcome to actual adulthood. But I can't afford what? The life you're living? I set down my coffee cup. Maybe that's something you should have thought about before you decided your blue-collar father was such an embarrassment. Another long silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder, more calculating. You know what, Dad? Maybe this is for the best. Maybe I needed this push to finally cut the cord completely. Something cold settled in my shefak. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, maybe it's time I stopped pretending we have anything in common anymore. You want to play hardball? Fine. Sarah's been saying for months that we should move anyway. Get a fresh start somewhere her parents can help us more. Her parents, I repeated slowly. Yeah, her father's offered me a position at his firm in Charleston. Better money, better connections, the people who actually understand what success looks like. The words hit me like a physical blow. He was threatening to take my grandchildren away, the grandchildren that didn't even exist yet, but might someday. He was threatening to erase me from his life completely. You'd move to Charleston. Why not? What's keeping me here? A father who thinks cutting off my utilities is some kind of life lesson? His voice was getting stronger, more confident. Sarah's right. Maybe it's time we surrounded ourselves with people who actually support our goals instead of trying to drag us down. Drag him down. 29 years of sacrifice, and I was dragging him down. You know what, Michael? You should do that. Pack up and move to Charleston. Let Sarah's daddy take care of you since you clearly need someone to handle your responsibilities. At least he doesn't use money as emotional blackmail. The line went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Emotional blackmail, I repeated. That's what this is, isn't it? You're punishing me for hurting your feelings, using money to control me to make me come crawling back. I felt something break inside me, not the clean snap of anger, but something deeper, something that had been holding my world together for 29 years. You think this is about control? Isn't it? I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at that legal pad full of canceled services. Emotional blackmail, using money to control him. My son thought 29 years of love looked like manipulation. I picked up the phone and started making new calls. If Michael wanted to see what real consequences looked like, it was time to show him. Because I wasn't done canceling things yet. Not even close. Friday afternoon, I drove to Michael's house with a for sale sign in the back of my truck. The same truck that had hauled materials for countless home improvement projects, the truck that had been at Michael's disposal whenever he needed something moved or fixed. I'd loaded the sign carefully along with my post hole digger, a level, and a bag of quickset concrete. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The neighborhood looked peaceful in the late afternoon sun. Kids were riding bikes on sidewalks I'd helped repair during community work days. Mrs. Patterson next door was watering her garden with the hose I'd helped her connect last spring when hers had burst. Normal people living normal lives, taking care of their own responsibilities. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, looking at the house. Every line of it was familiar. The roofline I'd extended to add the master bedroom, the front porch I'd rebuilt when the original one started sagging, the driveway I'd resurfaced 2 summers ago when Sarah complained about the cracks. Hundreds of hours of work, thousands of dollars in materials, all given freely because I thought I was building something for my family. I pulled out my post hole digger and measuring tape. The front lawn was still perfectly manicured. Of course it was, since I'd been paying for the lawn service for 3 years. The sprinkler system I'd installed myself was keeping everything green and pristine, just the way Sarah liked it. Even the mailbox was straight, because I'd reset it in concrete after some kid knocked it over with a baseball. I measured off the proper distance from the sidewalk, had to follow city ordinances, even for this, and marked the spot with spray paint. Then I started digging. The soil was hard clay, the kind that fights you every inch of the way. Sweat started beading on my forehead as I worked the digger, breaking through roots from the oak tree I'd planted the year Michael graduated law school. Back then, I'd thought it would grow up alongside his children, become a family tree with decades of memories. I was about halfway done driving the signpost into the ground when the front door flew open like someone had kicked it. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" Michael came running across the lawn, still in his work clothes. Expensive gray suit, probably cost more than I made in a week. His tie was loosened around his neck, sleeves rolled up, and his hand was still bandaged from Saturday night. He looked like he'd run straight from his car. I didn't look up from my work, just kept tamping the dirt around the post with the flat end of my digger, installing a for sale sign. A for sale sign? His voice cracked on the last word. "You can't sell this house. This is my house." That got me to stop digging. I straightened up slowly, feeling my lower back protest after years of this kind of work, and looked at him. Really looked at him. Standing there in his expensive suit, his Italian leather shoes planted on the lawn I maintained, his face flushed with indignation in front of the house I'd rebuilt from the foundation up. "Your house?" I asked quietly, setting the digger aside and pulling out my level to check the post. "Yes! My house! I live here! Sarah and I live here!" He gestured wildly at the building behind him like he was presenting evidence in court. I leaned on the post hole digger and smiled. Not the warm smile a father gives his son, but something colder, more calculated. Something that made Michael take an involuntary step back toward his perfect front porch. "Michael, whose name is on the deed?" I watched his face as the question hit him. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted toward the house, then back to me, then to the ground. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, desperately trying to remember the paperwork from when he'd moved in 5 years ago. The paperwork he'd been too busy to read carefully because Dad was handling all the boring details. When Mom and I got divorced, you said." His voice was smaller now, uncertain. "I said you could live here. I said I wanted you to have stability. I went back to digging, using the manual auger to make the hole deeper. I never said I was giving you the house. But I've been making mortgage payments. The desperation was creeping into his voice now, the same tone he'd used as a teenager when he was trying to talk his way out of trouble. You've been paying me rent. I poured some quick-set concrete into the hole around the post. Very cheap rent, actually. About half what this place would go for on the open market. I added water from the bottle I'd brought and started mixing it with a stick. But then, I wasn't trying to make money off my son. I was trying to help him get on his feet. Michael's face had gone white. He ran his good hand through his hair, that nervous gesture that meant his world was crumbling. Dad, you can't be serious about this. Oh, I'm dead serious. I attached the sign to the post with heavy-duty screws, making sure it was level and secure. The red and white "for sale" letters caught the afternoon light perfectly. See, something you said on Wednesday really stuck with me, about emotional blackmail, about me using money to control you. I was angry. I didn't mean. He took a step closer, his hands raised like he was trying to calm down a dangerous animal. No, you meant it. I looked him straight in the eye while I tightened the last screw. And you know what? You were right. I stepped back to admire my work, checking the sign from different angles to make sure it was visible from the street. I was using money to control you. I was enabling you to live beyond your means, to take me for granted, to treat me like hired help instead of your father. Dad, please. His voice broke slightly on the word please. I'm done enabling, Michael. I'm done being your personal bank account, your emergency contact, your backup plan. I started gathering my tools, placing each one carefully in the truck bed. I tried to be a good father. I sacrificed my own comfort, my own retirement, my own life for 29 years to make sure you had everything you needed. I know that. I appreciate. Do you? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The sound echoed off the house walls I'd insulated myself. Because what I've learned this week is that you don't appreciate it. You resent it. You see my love as manipulation, my help as control, my presence as embarrassment. Michael was quiet now, his lawyer instincts probably telling him that anything he said would only make things worse. He stood there fidgeting with his bandaged hand, probably realizing for the first time that his perfect life had been built on someone else's foundation. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, pulling on my work gloves to load the post hole digger. You've got 30 days to find somewhere else to live. I suggest you take Sarah's father up on that job offer in Charleston. Start fresh, like you wanted. 30 days? His voice shot up an octave. Dad, we can't find a place and move in 30 days. Do you know what the housing market is like right now? Sure you can. You're a lawyer, Sarah's got family money, you're both young and capable. I hefted the digger into the truck bed with a satisfying thunk. You'll figure it out. I started walking toward my truck. Unless, of course, you need your embarrassing blue-collar father to help you with that, too. Dad, wait! He followed me, actually running to keep up, his expensive shoes slipping on the grass. We can work this out. We can sit down and talk about this like adults, like civilized people. I stopped at my truck door and turned back to him, keys in hand. Adults, Michael, adults don't live in houses their parents own while calling those same parents manipulative. Adults don't take financial support for granted while being ashamed of where it comes from. I unlocked the truck door with a deliberate click. Adults don't threaten to move away when their free ride gets canceled. I never threatened. You told me you were moving to Charleston to get away from people who drag you down. You told me Sarah's parents understand success better than I do. I could feel my voice getting harder, more controlled. Well, congratulations. Now you get to find out what success looks like when you're actually paying for it yourself. I opened the truck door, and the familiar creak of the hinges seemed to punctuate my words. Michael was still standing there, looking lost and confused, the same expression he'd had as a kid when he couldn't figure out how to fix something he'd broken. Dad, please, don't do this. We're family. His voice was barely above a whisper now. I paused with one foot on the running board. You know what, son? Family doesn't threaten to cut each other out of their lives when they don't get their way. Family doesn't call love emotional blackmail. And family sure as hell doesn't treat the person who built their house like an embarrassment. I got in the truck and started the engine. The old Ford rumbled to life with the reliable sound of something built to last. Michael was still standing in the driveway, looking smaller somehow in his expensive suit. You wanted independence, Michael. You wanted to handle your own life without your old man hovering around. I put the truck in reverse and started backing out. Well, you've got it. Every single bit of it. As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, standing next to that for sale sign, like a scarecrow in his own front yard. For the first time in 29 years, he was finally understanding what he'd actually lost. The neighborhood looked different as I drove through it. Mrs. Patterson waved from her garden, probably wondering why I looked so grim. The Morrison kids were playing basketball on the hoop I'd helped their dad install last summer. Normal people, living normal lives, taking care of each other because they wanted to, not because they had to. I drove straight home and opened a beer, something I rarely did on weekdays. Sat on my small patio and looked out at the modest apartment complex where I lived. Not much to look at, but it was mine. Paid for with my own money, decorated with my own choices, maintained on my own schedule. For the first time in years, nobody was going to call me asking for help with something they should have learned how to handle themselves. The house sold within 2 weeks. A nice young couple with a baby on the way, the Johnsons. Mark was a teacher, Lisa was a nurse. Real people with real jobs who understood the value of hard work. They walked through every room with genuine appreciation, running their hands along the crown molding I'd cut and installed myself, admiring the hardwood floors I'd laid plank by plank during my vacation time. "This is incredible craftsmanship," Mark said, examining the Jeff built-ins in the living room. His calloused hands told me he knew quality work when he saw it. "You don't see attention to detail like this anymore." "The previous owner's father built most of it," the realtor explained, reading from her notes. "He must have really loved his son," Lisa said, cradling her pregnant belly as she admired the kitchen I'd remodeled. "You can feel the care that went into every detail." I cleared my throat. "Actually, I'm the father. I did all the work." They both turned to look at me with surprise, then something like respect. "You're selling your son's house?" Mark asked carefully, probably sensing there was a story there. "Teaching him about independence," I said. It was the truth, even if it wasn't the whole truth. They bought it at asking price. No negotiations, no demands for repairs, no complaints about the work I'd done. They appreciated the craftsmanship, the attention to detail, the love that had gone into every room. Things my own son had never bothered to notice, or at least never bothered to acknowledge. Michael tried calling during the closing process. The first few times I let it ring. Then he started leaving voicemails. "Dad, please. I know you're angry, but we need to talk about this. Sarah's pregnant. We just found out yesterday. That's going to be your grandchild. Doesn't that mean anything to you? A grandchild." I sat in my truck in the parking lot of the title company, listening to that message 3 times. The news hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I dreamed about teaching a grandchild how to use tools, how to fix things, how to build something with their own hands. I'd imagined weekend projects, teaching moments, the chance to pass on everything I knew to someone who might actually want to learn. Now I might never get that chance, but even that wasn't enough to make me pick up the phone, because I'd learned something important over the past few weeks. Love without respect isn't really love at all. It's just dependency wearing a prettier name. Sarah left more voicemails than Michael did, her voice getting more desperate with each one. "Jeff, I'm so sorry about everything. I know we were wrong. Michael was wrong. I was wrong. We found a place in Charleston. My father helped with the down payment, but the mortgage is 3 times what we were paying you. Michael's working 16-hour days trying to keep up with the payments. I barely see him anymore." Good, I thought as I listened to her crying on my voicemail. Let him learn what financial pressure actually feels like. Let him discover what it costs to maintain the lifestyle he'd taken for granted for so long. "The apartment is tiny," she continued in another message. "1 bedroom, no yard, no garage for Michael's tools. Not that he knows how to use them anyway. We had to put most of our furniture in storage because there's no room. And the neighbors, Jeff, they party until 3 in the morning. Michael tried to talk to them about it, but they just laughed at him. I could picture it perfectly. My son, who'd grown up in suburban comfort, trying to assert himself in some rundown apartment complex where his law degree and expensive suits meant nothing. We could really use your help, another voicemail continued, and I could hear the exhaustion in Sarah's voice. Not financially. I know we burned that bridge. But advice, support. You were the only father figure I ever had, and now I'm going to be a mother, and I don't know how to do any of this without you. That one almost broke me. Sarah had lost her own father when she was 12, cancer, quick and brutal. I'd been the one to walk her down the aisle when she and Michael got married, because her mother had remarried someone Sarah barely knew. I'd been the one she called when she needed advice about everything from car trouble to career decisions. For a moment, sitting in my kitchen with the phone in my hand, I considered calling her back. She didn't deserve to suffer for Michael's mistakes. But then I remembered Michael's words about emotional blackmail, about me using money to control him. I remembered the laughter from his friends when I'd walked away from his party. I remembered 29 years of being taken for granted, of having my love treated like a business transaction. Sarah had made her choice when she sided with her parents, when she whispered about me keeping me in the background at their parties. She'd chosen Michael's version of success over the man who'd actually made that success possible. Maybe they could work things out after some time passed, Sarah had said in one message. Maybe we could rebuild this relationship once everyone had cooled down and learned to appreciate what they'd lost.